The fluorescent lights of County General Hospital buzzed overhead as Vivien Torres pressed her forehead against the cold glass window of the ICU. Inside, her 12-year-old brother Marcus Jr. lay connected to machines that beeped steadily, each sound a reminder of time running out. The doctors had been clear. Without the surgery within 2 weeks, the congenital heart defect would kill him. The cost? $200,000. The amount in her bank account? $3,216. Her phone buzzed. Another text from her manager at the Sterling Room, the upscale restaurant where she worked double shifts. Where are you? Saturday night rush. You're fired if you're not here in 30 minutes. Vivien closed her eyes. She couldn't lose this job. It was her third this month. But how could she leave Marcus? How could she smile and serve expensive wine to people who spent more on one meal than she made in a month when her baby brother was dying? Miss Torres? A nurse approached, her expression sympathetic but professional. Visiting hours are ending. You should get some rest. Rest? The word felt like a joke. Vivien nodded numbly, gathered her worn purse, and headed toward the elevator. Her reflection in the metal doors showed a young woman of 24 who looked 10 years older. Dark circles under her brown eyes, her black hair pulled back in a messy bun, her waitress uniform wrinkled from sitting in the hospital chair for hours. The elevator descended, and with each floor, Vivien felt herself sinking deeper into despair. What would she do? She'd already applied for every loan, every charity, every grant. Nothing. No one wanted to help a girl with no credit, no collateral, no hope. The doors opened to the hospital lobby, and Vivien stepped out, her mind racing through impossible solutions. She could sell everything she owned, but that wouldn't even cover a tenth of the cost. She could. Excuse me, miss. Watch where you're going. Vivien looked up to find herself face to face with a tall man in an expensive navy suit. His dark hair was perfectly styled, his jaw sharp, his blue eyes cold. Behind him stood a woman with blonde hair swept into an elegant updo, wearing a red dress that probably cost more than Vivien's yearly rent. The woman's green eyes swept over Vivien with thinly veiled contempt. Sorry, Vivien muttered, trying to step around them. Wait. The man's voice stopped her. Something in his tone made her turn back. His expression had shifted from annoyed to calculating. I need to speak with you. It's urgent. The blonde woman touched his arm. Julian, we don't have time for this. The lawyer is waiting at the restaurant. Julian. Vivien recognized that name. Julian Blackwood. The billionaire CEO whose face was plastered across business magazines. Owner of Blackwood Industries, one of the largest tech companies in the country. What could he possibly want with her? Veronica, give me a moment, Julian said, his eyes fixed on Vivien. Veronica's perfectly painted lips pressed into a thin line. 5 minutes. Then we're leaving. She walked toward the hospital entrance, her heels clicking sharply against the tile. Julian turned his full attention to Vivien. What's your name? Vivien Torres. Why? How much do you need? The question was so unexpected that Vivien actually laughed, a bitter sound. Excuse me? I overheard you talking to the nurse earlier. Your brother needs surgery. Heart defect. $200,000. How much do you have? Vivien felt heat rise to her cheeks. This stranger had been eavesdropping on her private tragedy? That's none of your business. I'll pay for it. All of it. Plus another $100,000 for your trouble. The world seemed to tilt. Vivien grabbed the wall for support. What? Julian stepped closer, his voice low and urgent. I need you to do something for me. Something that requires immediate action. In return, I'll pay for your brother's surgery, cover all medical expenses, and give you $300,000 total. But I need your answer right now. This had to be a dream. Or a scam. People like Julian Blackwood didn't offer desperate waitresses hundreds of thousands of dollars. What do you want me to do? Pretend to be my girlfriend. Vivien stared at him. What? My grandfather's will has a clause. If I'm not in a committed relationship by my 35th birthday, I lose control of the company. That's in 6 months. Veronica and I just ended our engagement an hour ago. I need someone new, someone believable, someone who needs this arrangement as much as I do. Why me? Because you're desperate. Because you'll say yes. Because you have nothing to lose and everything to gain. Julian pulled out his phone. I can have the hospital administrator authorize your brother's surgery within the hour. I can transfer $50,000 to your account right now as a down payment. All you have to do is walk outside with me, put your hand in mine, and smile at Veronica like you're the happiest woman alive. Vivien's mind spun. This was insane. Completely insane. But Marcus was upstairs dying, and this man was offering her the one thing she couldn't find anywhere else: hope. If I say yes, my brother gets the surgery immediately? Within the hour. I'll have my lawyers draw up a contract tomorrow, but the medical treatment starts tonight. You have my word. His word. The word of a billionaire she'd met 5 minutes ago. But what choice did she have? Let pride kill her brother? Let fear stop her from saving the only family she had left? Before we continue with Vivien's life-changing decision, I need to ask you something. Have you ever been in a position where you had to choose between your pride and saving someone you love? How far would you go to protect your family? Please subscribe and share your thoughts in the comments below. Your story might help someone else facing an impossible choice. Vivien looked up at Julian Blackwood. She saw calculation in his eyes, yes, but also something else. Desperation that matched her own. I'll do it, she said. Julian's shoulders relaxed slightly. Smart choice. Now, before we go outside, tell me something about yourself. Favorite color? Favorite food? How did we meet? You're serious about this? Completely. Veronica is vindictive and clever. If we're going to convince everyone we're together, we need to start building our story right now. In 2 minutes, we walk out those doors, and you become the woman who stole Julian Blackwood's heart. Are you ready? No. She wasn't ready. But Marcus needed her to be. My favorite color is blue. I love Italian food. We met at the Sterling Room where I work. You came in for a business dinner 3 months ago and we couldn't stop talking. You asked for my number and we've been secretly dating ever since. Julian smiled for the first time, and it transformed his face from cold to almost handsome. Perfect. One more thing. He pulled out his phone and typed rapidly. What's your bank account number? Vivien recited it, still feeling like she was in a dream. Within seconds her phone buzzed. She looked at the screen and nearly dropped it. $50,000 had just appeared in her account. The rest comes after we convince my family and the board that we're real. Now take my hand. Vivien placed her hand in his. His grip was warm and firm. Smile like you love me, Julian said softly. Like I'm the best thing that ever happened to you. It should have been impossible. But thinking of Marcus upstairs, thinking of the surgery that would save his life, Vivien found herself smiling. Not a fake smile. A real one. A smile of hope. They walked toward the entrance together. Through the glass doors, Vivien could see Veronica waiting, her expression impatient. This was it. The moment that would change everything. Julian squeezed her hand. Remember, you're happy. You're in love. And you're about to meet my very angry ex-fiancé who will do everything she can to destroy you. Ready? No, Vivien admitted. But let's do it anyway. They pushed through the doors into the cool evening air. Veronica's eyes widened as she saw their joined hands, the genuine smile on Vivien's face, the protective way Julian stood close to her. Julian, what is this? Veronica's voice was sharp. Julian turned to Vivien, and for a moment she saw something flicker in his eyes. Gratitude maybe. Or relief. Then he looked back at Veronica with an expression that was pure defiance. Veronica Ashford, meet Vivien Torres. My girlfriend. The silence that followed Julian's announcement felt like glass about to shatter. Veronica's face cycled through shock, disbelief, and finally rage. Her green eyes fixed on Vivien with such intensity that Vivien instinctively stepped closer to Julian. Your girlfriend, Veronica repeated slowly. You expect me to believe that you, who just proposed to me 3 weeks ago, already have a girlfriend? Yes, Julian said simply. His thumb traced small circles on the back of Vivien's hand, a gesture so natural that it almost convinced Vivien herself. Vivien and I have been seeing each other for 3 months. I should have been honest with you from the start, Veronica. That's why I ended things today. 3 months. Veronica's laugh was cold. And where exactly have you been hiding her? I've been with you nearly every day. We kept it quiet, Vivien heard herself say. Her voice was steadier than she felt. Julian wanted to make sure things were serious before going public. Given his position, given your history together, it made sense to be cautious. Veronica's gaze snapped to her. And you are what, exactly? Let me guess. A model? An actress? I'm a waitress at the Sterling Room. A waitress. Veronica's smile turned predatory. How charming. Tell me, Vivien, do you have any idea what you're getting into? The media scrutiny, the social obligations, the pressure of being with a man like Julian Blackwood. I know I care about him, Vivien said. The rest we'll figure out together. Julian's hand tightened on hers. A signal? A warning? Either way, it grounded her. This is ridiculous, Veronica said, turning back to Julian. Your grandfather will never believe this. A waitress? Someone he's never met? Someone with no social standing, no connections, no. Someone real, Julian interrupted. His voice had an edge now. Someone who sees me as more than a business opportunity or a social stepping stone. That's what my grandfather wants, Veronica. You know that. Veronica's jaw clenched. For a moment, Vivien almost felt sorry for her. Almost. Then she remembered the $50,000 in her account, the surgery that would save Marcus, and she straightened her spine. We'll see, Veronica said finally. We'll see how long this little performance lasts. She turned on her heel and walked toward a black car waiting at the curb. Vivien watched her go, her heart hammering. Only when the car pulled away did she let out the breath she'd been holding. You did well, Julian said, releasing her hand. The warmth disappeared immediately, replaced by cool professionalism. Better than I expected. What now? Now we go back inside. I'll speak with the hospital administrator about your brother's surgery. Then we'll go to my penthouse and discuss the full terms of our arrangement. Our arrangement. The words brought Vivien back to reality. This wasn't a fairy tale. This was a business deal. One that would save her brother's life. Inside the hospital, Julian's presence transformed everything. The administrator who had told Vivien, maybe in 6 months, suddenly appeared, all smiles and assurances. Doctors were consulted. The surgery was scheduled for the next morning. The best cardiac surgeon in the state would perform it. Vivien stood in the corner of the administrative office watching Julian work. He spoke with authority but not arrogance. He made calls that mobilized entire medical teams. Within 30 minutes, what had seemed impossible became a concrete plan. Miss Torres? The administrator smiled at her. Your brother will be in excellent hands. Dr. Peterson is the best. Julian has arranged for a private recovery room as well. All expenses covered. Thank you, Vivien whispered. Her eyes burned with tears she refused to let fall. Not here. Not in front of Julian. As they left the hospital, Julian led her to a silver car that probably cost more than she'd earn in a lifetime. A driver opened the door and Vivien slid into leather seats so soft they felt like butter. Your apartment? Julian asked as they pulled into traffic. I need to pack some things, Vivien said. And I have to call my manager. I was supposed to work tonight. Give me the name of the restaurant. The Sterling Room. But I can call them myself. I'll handle it. Julian was already typing on his phone. You won't be working there anymore. The optics wouldn't make sense. My girlfriend doesn't work as a waitress while dating me. It raises too many questions. The casual way he said, my girlfriend, sent a strange flutter through Vivien's stomach. She pushed it aside. I need to work. I have rent, utilities, student loans. All covered under our arrangement. You'll receive a monthly allowance of $10,000 for personal expenses. Your rent will be paid directly. Your loans will be handled. But you'll be living with me. Vivien's head snapped toward him. Living with you? In my penthouse. Separate bedrooms, obviously, but we need to be seen together. Coming and going from the same residence. It makes the relationship believable. He glanced at her. That's not negotiable. Everything was moving so fast. This morning she'd been a struggling waitress with a dying brother. Now she was agreeing to move in with a billionaire, to pretend to love him, to deceive his entire family in the world. Tell me about the contract, Vivien said. What exactly do you expect from me? Julian's driver pulled up outside her apartment building, a rundown complex in a neighborhood that made Julian's driver lock the doors immediately. Come up, Vivien said. We should talk privately. Her apartment was a studio with stained carpet, a kitchenette that barely functioned, and windows that didn't quite close all the way. She watched Julian take it in, expecting judgment. Instead, his expression remained neutral. Sit, Vivien said, gesturing to her second-hand couch. I'm going to make coffee and you're going to explain everything. As she prepared the coffee, Julian spoke. The arrangement is simple. For the next 6 months, you'll be my girlfriend in every public sense. You'll attend events with me, meet my family, be photographed at my side. You'll live in my penthouse, learn about my business, and convince everyone, especially my grandfather, that we're genuinely in love. And in private? In private, we maintain professional boundaries. Separate bedrooms, separate lives when we're alone. This is a business arrangement, nothing more. Vivien handed him a mug and sat across from him. What happens after 6 months? My grandfather's clause requires me to be in a committed relationship on my 35th birthday. Once that date passes, we maintain the appearance for another month or two, then stage an amicable breakup. You'll receive the remaining $250,000, a glowing recommendation letter that will open doors anywhere, and my gratitude. Why did you and Veronica break up? Julian's jaw tightened. She wanted the Blackwood name and fortune more than she wanted me. When I told her I was questioning whether we should actually get married, she threatened to go to the media with private information about my company. I ended things immediately. She seems like she'll make trouble. Let her try. With you by my side, her claims will look like jealous lies. Julian set down his mug. I'm offering you a way out of your situation, Vivien. A way to save your brother, pay your debts, and start fresh. All I ask is 6 months of your time and your commitment to making this believable. Vivien thought about Marcus, about the surgery scheduled for tomorrow, about the life she'd been living versus the life being offered. It wasn't real love. It wasn't even real affection. But it was hope. I want the contract to include continued medical coverage for Marcus beyond the surgery, she said. Whatever he needs for as long as he needs it. Julian nodded. Done. And I want to be able to visit him whenever I want, even if it interrupts your schedule. Agreed. And I want your word that if at any point this arrangement hurts Marcus or puts him in danger, we end it immediately. You have my word. Julian stood and extended his hand. Do we have a deal? Vivien looked at his hand, then at his face. In his eyes, she saw the same desperation she felt. Different circumstances, different problems, but the same fundamental need: survival. She stood and shook his hand. We have a deal. Good. Pack what you need for tonight. My people will move the rest of your things tomorrow. We have a lot of work to do. As Vivien packed her small suitcase, Julian made calls arranging everything. Movers, storage, notification to her landlord. He operated with the efficiency of someone used to solving problems with money and authority. One more thing, Julian said as they prepared to leave. Starting now, when we're in public, you call me Julian, not Mr. Blackwood. And I'll call you Viv. We need to seem comfortable with each other. Intimate. Viv, she repeated. No one had called her that since her parents died. Okay. Ready? Vivien looked around her tiny apartment one last time. This place had been her refuge after her parents' accident, the space where she'd cried and struggled and fought to keep Marcus alive. Now she was leaving it behind for a penthouse, a fake relationship, and a chance at something better. Ready, she said. As they rode the elevator down, Julian's phone buzzed constantly. Vivien caught glimpses of messages from names she recognized. Business partners, family members, media contacts. News of their relationship was already spreading. Your brother's surgery is at 7 tomorrow morning, Julian said as they settled back into his car. I've arranged for you to stay at the hospital tonight if you want. The offer surprised her. You don't need me at the penthouse tonight? Your brother is more important. We can start the public appearances tomorrow afternoon. For tonight, be with him. Gratitude washed over Vivien. Thank you. Julian nodded, already back to his phone. But Vivien noticed the slight relaxation in his shoulders, the way his fingers stopped their nervous tap against his thigh. Maybe he wasn't as cold as he pretended to be. The driver took them back to County General. As Vivien prepared to get out, Julian caught her arm. Vivien, he said. This will work. We'll both get what we need. Just trust me. She wanted to say she didn't trust him, didn't trust anyone who made promises that seemed too good to be true. But looking at him, seeing the genuine concern in his eyes, she found herself nodding. Okay, she said. I trust you. It was a lie. But it was the lie they both needed to believe. The surgery took 9 hours. Vivien sat in the waiting room while Julian worked on his laptop beside her, occasionally bringing her coffee or food she couldn't eat. She hadn't expected him to stay. When she told him he didn't have to, he'd simply said, "Where else would your boyfriend be?" and returned to his work. When Dr. Peterson finally emerged, still in his scrubs, Vivien jumped to her feet. The surgery was successful, he said, and Vivien's legs nearly gave out. Julian's hand steadied her elbow. Marcus did beautifully. The repair is solid. With proper care and follow-up, he should live a completely normal life. Vivien covered her face with her hands, finally letting the tears fall. All the fear, all the desperation, all the sleepless nights came pouring out. She felt Julian's arm around her shoulders, pulling her against his chest. It should have felt awkward, this stranger comforting her. Instead, it felt like an anchor. "Thank you," she whispered into his expensive suit jacket. "Thank you." "You don't have to thank me," Julian said quietly. "We're helping each other, remember?" But it didn't feel equal. He'd saved her brother's life. What was she giving him in return? A few months of pretending? Marcus woke up that evening, groggy but alive. His eyes found Vivien immediately and he smiled weakly. "Vivi," he whispered. The nickname he'd given her when he was 3 and couldn't pronounce her full name. "Hey buddy. How do you feel? Tired? Sore?" His gaze moved past her to Julian, who stood near the door. "Who's that?" Vivien glanced back at Julian, then at her brother. She'd been so focused on making the arrangement that she hadn't thought about explaining it to Marcus. "How did you tell a 12-year-old that your new boyfriend was fake but also the reason he was alive?" "That's Julian," she said carefully. "He's my friend. He helped arrange the surgery." Marcus's eyes widened. "Julian Blackwood? I've seen you on TV. You made that new phone everyone wants." Julian stepped forward, his expression softening in a way Vivien hadn't seen before. "Guilty. Though I had a lot of help. You must be Marcus. Your sister talks about you constantly." "She does." "Constantly," Julian confirmed. "She's very proud of you." Marcus looked at Vivien with confusion. She'd never mentioned Julian because Julian hadn't existed in her life until yesterday. But Julian was covering smoothly and she was grateful. Over the next few days a routine developed. Vivien spent mornings at the hospital with Marcus. Julian would arrive around noon with lunch and his laptop, working from Marcus's room while Vivien read to her brother or they watched movies together. Nurses and doctors treated them like any normal couple, and slowly Vivien began to understand what Julian meant about making it believable. They needed to know each other. Really know each other. On the 4th day, as Marcus napped, Julian closed his laptop and turned to Vivien. "Tell me about your parents," he said. The question caught her off guard. "Why?" "Because if we'd been dating for 3 months I would know. And if my grandfather asks you about them at dinner next week, you need to be able to say, 'Julian knows this story,' without hesitation." "Right." "The performance." Vivien set down her book. "They died in a car accident 3 years ago. Drunk driver ran a red light. They were coming home from my college graduation." She kept her voice steady, factual. "Marcus was 9. He had the heart condition already, but our parents had good insurance. After they died I became his guardian. Dropped out of the nursing program I'd just gotten into, got 3 jobs and tried to keep us afloat." Julian was quiet for a moment. "I'm sorry." "Your turn. Tell me about your family." "I'm walking into dinner with them next week completely blind." Julian leaned back in his chair. "My grandfather, Thomas Blackwood, built the company from nothing. He's tough but fair. Values loyalty and honesty above everything. My mother, Catherine, is an art collector. She means well but can be overwhelming. My sister, Grace, is 28 and runs our foundation. She's protective of me." "And your father?" "Died when I was 12. Heart attack." Vivien's eyes widened. "Marcus's age?" "Yes." Julian glanced at Marcus sleeping peacefully. "I remember what it felt like being that age and terrified. At least Marcus has you." "I had boarding schools and therapists." There was a vulnerability in his voice that made Vivien see him differently. Not just a cold billionaire but a man who'd been a scared kid once. "What about Veronica?" Vivien asked. "How long were you together?" 2 years. It started as a business partnership, became a relationship, then an engagement that neither of us really wanted. My grandfather pushed for it because her family has connections we needed. She wanted the Blackwood name. We were both settling. That's sad. It's practical. Most relationships at my level are. Is that really what you want? A practical marriage? Julian met her eyes. I want the company. I want to continue my grandfather's legacy. If marriage is the price, I'll pay it. But I'd rather it be on my terms with someone I can trust than under Veronica's manipulation. And you trust me? You need me, which means you have no reason to betray me. That's close enough to trust for now. It was a cynical way to view relationships, but Vivien understood it. She'd been betrayed by people who claimed to care about her after her parents died. Distant relatives who wanted the small inheritance. Friends who disappeared when she couldn't afford to go out anymore. Need-based trust at least had clear parameters. What do I need to know for this dinner? Vivien asked. What will they ask me? Everything. My grandfather will want to know your background, your education, your plans. My mother will ask about your style preferences, your hobbies, whether you want children. Grace will try to determine if you're using me. That's a lot. It is. But we have a week to prepare. Starting tomorrow, you'll move into the penthouse. We'll spend evenings going over details, practicing conversation, learning to be comfortable around each other. Comfortable, Vivien repeated. Like how? Julian stood and held out his hand. Like this. Stand up. Confused, Vivien took his hand and stood. Julian stepped closer into what would normally be personal space. His hands moved to her waist, loosely, casually. If we've been dating for 3 months, we're comfortable with casual touch. And holding my arm around you, standing close. It should look natural, not forced. Vivien's heart rate picked up. This close, she could see that his blue eyes had small flecks of gray in them. Could smell his cologne, something expensive and subtle. Put your hands on my shoulders, Julian instructed. Like you've done it 1,000 times. Vivien complied, trying to ignore how solid he felt under her hands. Better. Now, if someone approaches us, you lean in slightly like you're telling me something private. It signals intimacy. He paused. Try it. Vivien leaned in, bringing her face close to his. Like this? Exactly like that. His voice was lower now, and Vivien realized how easy it would be to believe this was real. How simple to forget this was practice. We need to be able to do this without thinking about it. Without looking nervous or uncertain. How do people usually react when they see you two together? Marcus's sleepy voice made them spring apart. Vivien had forgotten her brother was in the room. Marcus was awake now, watching them with interest. They're usually jealous, Julian said smoothly, stepping back but keeping his tone light. Your sister is pretty impressive. Marcus grinned. She is. Are you guys really dating? The question hung in the air. Vivien opened her mouth, the lie ready, but Julian spoke first. We are. And I'm lucky she gave me a chance. Good. She deserves someone who treats her right. Our last neighbor tried to ask her out and he was terrible. He didn't even have a job. Vivien felt her cheeks heat. Marcus. What? It's true. Julian seems way better. He has a job and everything. Julian laughed, a genuine sound that transformed his face. High praise. I'll try to live up to it. As Marcus launched into questions about Julian's company, Vivien watched them interact. Julian was patient, explaining technology in terms a 12-year-old could understand, never condescending. Marcus was animated in a way he hadn't been in months, excited and engaged. Maybe this arrangement wouldn't be so hard after all. Maybe they could pull this off. That evening, after Marcus fell asleep again, Julian drove Vivien to his penthouse. The building was in the most expensive part of the city, with a doorman who greeted Julian by name and a private elevator that required a key card. The penthouse itself was stunning. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city. Modern furniture in grays and whites filled the open space. Everything was clean, elegant, and impersonal. Your room is down this hall, Julian said, leading her to a bedroom that was larger than her entire previous apartment. Bathroom is through that door. The closet has basics, but we'll need to take you shopping tomorrow. Shopping? You'll need appropriate clothing for events. Gowns, cocktail dresses, business casual outfits. We have a charity gala this weekend. It's your first major appearance as my girlfriend. Reality settled over Vivien like a heavy blanket. This wasn't just moving in together and practicing small talk. This was stepping into Julian's world completely. A world where she didn't know the rules, the expectations, or how to navigate the social dynamics. Hey. Julian's voice was softer. You look terrified. I'm terrified. I'm a waitress, Julian. I've never been to a charity gala. I don't know which fork to use or how to talk to billionaires or any of this. You talk to me just fine. That's different. It's not. They're just people. Wealthy, often boring people who care too much about appearances. You smile, you ask polite questions, you stay by my side. That's all you need to do. Vivien sat on the edge of the massive bed. What if I mess up? Then we handle it together. That's the point of this arrangement, remember? We're a team. It was a strange concept, being part of a team with someone she barely knew. But looking at Julian, seeing the certainty in his expression, Vivien felt some of her fear ease. Okay, she said. Teach me. Teach me everything I need to know. Julian smiled. We start tomorrow. For tonight, rest. You've had a long few days. As he turned to leave, Vivien called out, Julian? Thank you. For staying at the hospital. You didn't have to do that. He paused at the door. Yes, I did. That's what boyfriends do, remember? But the way he said it, the small smile on his face, made Vivien wonder if maybe he was forgetting this was fake too. The charity gala for children's hospitals was being held at the Grand Belmont Hotel, a building so opulent that Vivien felt out of place the moment their car pulled up to the red carpet. Camera flashes exploded like fireworks. Reporters shouted questions. And she was about to step out in a sapphire blue gown that cost more than she used to make in 3 months. Remember, Julian said quietly, his hand on her knee. Smile, stay close to me, and if anyone asks difficult questions, defer to me. You're here as my guest, not for interviews. Vivien nodded, her throat dry. They'd spent the past 3 days preparing for this moment. Shopping for the perfect dress, practicing walking in heels, rehearsing their story until she could recite how they met in her sleep. But none of that felt adequate now. The door opened. Julian stepped out first, then turned and offered his hand. Vivien took it, allowing him to guide her onto the red carpet. The cameras went wild. Julian, over here. Who's your date? Is this your new girlfriend? What happened with Veronica Ashford? Julian's arm slid around Vivien's waist, pulling her close. She forced herself to smile, to lean into him slightly the way they'd practiced. His hand on her hip felt warm through the thin fabric of her dress. Julian Blackwood, you've been very mysterious about your personal life, a reporter called out. Care to introduce us? Julian turned them toward the camera with the easy confidence of someone who'd done this 1,000 times. This is Vivien Torres. And yes, before you ask, we're together. How long have you been dating? A few months, Vivien heard herself say. Her voice sounded steadier than she felt. We kept it quiet initially. Smart choice, another reporter said. Given the very public end to Julian's engagement last week, Veronica has been quite vocal about her side of the story. Vivien felt Julian tense slightly. They'd prepared for this, for Veronica's attempts to control the narrative. Veronica and I ended things amicably, Julian said firmly. We wanted different things. I wish her well. And you, Miss Torres, aren't you concerned about stepping into the middle of such a high-profile situation? Before Vivien could answer, a familiar voice cut through the noise. Concerned? Why would she be concerned? She got exactly what she wanted. Veronica Ashford stood 10 feet away, draped in a red dress that looked like liquid fire. Her blonde hair was styled in perfect waves, her smile sharp as glass. Behind her stood a man Vivien recognized from business magazines. Richard Sterling, CEO of Sterling Tech, Julian's main competitor. The reporters sensed blood in the water. Cameras swiveled between the two couples. Veronica, Julian said coolly. Richard, I didn't realize you'd be attending tonight. I wouldn't miss it, Veronica said, her eyes locked on Vivien. Especially not when there's such an interesting new development to witness. Tell me, Vivien, how does it feel to be Julian's rebound? The word hung in the air like a challenge. Vivien felt every eye on her, waiting to see if she'd crack under pressure. This was the test. This moment would define whether people believed her or dismissed her as exactly what Veronica claimed. A rebound, a placeholder, a fake. Vivien stepped forward, out of Julian's protective embrace. She met Veronica's gaze directly. I don't think about it that way, Vivien said calmly. I'm not interested in your history with Julian. I'm interested in our future together. But I can understand why you might frame it like that. It must be difficult to see him happy with someone else. Veronica's smile faltered. Richard Sterling's eyebrows rose slightly. Happy? Veronica laughed. Darling, he's not happy. He's desperate. Do you even know about the clause in his grandfather's will? About how he needs to be married by his birthday or he loses everything. I know, Vivien said. This was dangerous territory. One wrong word and the entire arrangement could unravel. Julian told me about it on our second date. He was honest about the pressure he's under. I appreciated that honesty. How convenient for him to find you right after we broke up. Tell me, what do you do for a living? I was a waitress at the Sterling Room. Was. Past tense. Not anymore now that you have access to the Blackwood fortune? Vivien felt her temper flare but kept her voice level. I left that job because being Julian's girlfriend comes with its own responsibilities. Public events, family obligations supporting his work. It's a full-time commitment and I'm happy to make it. How noble. Veronica turned to Julian. You always did prefer projects. First the company, now her. Does your grandfather know you're trying to pass off a waitress as suitable wife material? Careful, Veronica. Julian's voice was cold. You're making assumptions about my grandfather's values that say more about you than about Vivien. We should go inside, Richard Sterling said, finally speaking. Veronica, I think you've made your point. But Veronica wasn't done. She stepped closer to Vivien, lowering her voice so only the four of them could hear. He doesn't love you. He's using you. And the moment that clause is satisfied, he'll discard you just like he did me. Don't get too comfortable in that penthouse, sweetheart. You're temporary. Vivien looked at Veronica and saw not just anger but genuine hurt beneath the venom. This woman had lost Julian, whether or not their relationship had been real, and she was lashing out. Maybe, Vivien said quietly. Maybe everything ends eventually. But I'd rather have something temporary and real than something permanent and hollow. Wouldn't you? Veronica's eyes widened slightly. For a moment her mask slipped and Vivien saw confusion there. Then it was back, the sharp smile, the cold eyes. Enjoy the gala, Veronica said. She took Richard's arm and swept past them into the hotel. The reporters exploded with questions, but Julian was already moving, guiding Vivien away from the cameras and into the building. They didn't speak until they were inside in a quiet corridor away from the noise. That was, Julian started then stopped. I don't know what that was. Too much. Perfect. He turned to face her, his expression intense. You handled her perfectly. Better than perfectly. Even I almost believed you. The words hit harder than they should have. Because Vivien had almost believed herself. Standing there, defending their relationship, she'd felt genuinely protective of what they were building, even if it was built on lies. We should find your grandfather, Vivien said, needing to move past the moment. You said he'd be here. The ballroom was magnificent. Crystal chandeliers cast warm light over hundreds of guests in designer clothing. A small orchestra played in one corner. Waiters circulated with champagne and hors d'oeuvres. Julian kept his hand on the small of Vivien's back as they moved through the crowd. People stopped them constantly. Introductions were made. Business partners, society figures, people whose names Vivien tried desperately to remember. Julian, my boy. A tall man with silver hair and sharp blue eyes approached them. Thomas Blackwood had the same commanding presence as his grandson but softened by age and laugh lines around his eyes. I've been hoping to run into you tonight. Grandfather. Julian's entire demeanor changed, becoming warmer. I want you to meet someone. This is Vivien Torres. Viv, this is my grandfather, Thomas. Thomas's eyes swept over Vivien with the assessing gaze of someone who'd built an empire by reading people accurately. Miss Torres. I've heard quite a bit about you in the past week. All from gossip columns and business rivals, mind you. My grandson apparently doesn't believe in phone calls. We wanted to tell you in person, Julian said. Things have been moving quickly. I'll say. You end an engagement and have a new girlfriend within days. That's quite the whirlwind. Vivien felt the weight of his scrutiny. This was the man whose approval they needed most. The man who held Julian's future in his hands. Mr. Blackwood, Vivien said. I understand this must look suspicious. But I promise you Julian and I didn't plan this timing. We'd been seeing each other for a while before he ended things with Veronica. He was trying to do the right thing, to be honest with everyone. Call me Thomas. His expression softened slightly. And tell me, what is it you do, Vivien? Until recently I was a waitress. Before that, I was studying nursing before family circumstances required me to leave school. Family circumstances? My parents died 3 years ago. I became guardian to my younger brother who needed medical care. I had to prioritize his needs over my education. Thomas nodded slowly. How old is your brother? 12. He just had heart surgery this week. Successful, I hope? Very. Thanks to Julian. Vivien glanced at Julian, allowing genuine gratitude to show in her expression. He arranged everything. The best surgeon, the best care. Marcus is recovering well. Is that so? Thomas looked at his grandson with something that might have been approval. Julian, you didn't mention you'd been involved in that. It wasn't worth mentioning, Julian said. Vivien needed help. I was in a position to provide it. Interesting. Thomas turned back to Vivien. Walk with me, my dear. Let's give these reporters something to speculate about while I get to know the woman who's captured my grandson's attention. Vivien glanced at Julian, who nodded encouragingly. She took Thomas's offered arm and let him guide her toward the terrace doors. Outside, the evening air was cool. The terrace overlooked the city, lights twinkling below. Thomas led her to a quiet corner away from other guests who'd come out for fresh air. Now, Thomas said, tell me the truth. Are you in love with my grandson? The direct question caught Vivien off guard. She'd prepared for suspicion, for testing, but not for this straightforward approach. I care about him very much, she said carefully. And I know this looks sudden from the outside. But Julian he's different than I expected. Kinder. More thoughtful. That doesn't answer my question. Vivien met his eyes. She thought about the past week, about Julian staying at the hospital, about the way he'd protected her from the reporters, about the small moments of genuine connection between their practice performances. I don't know yet, she admitted. I think I could fall in love with him. Maybe I'm already starting to. But it's complicated. Why complicated? Because nothing about this situation is normal. Because he's Julian Blackwood and I'm nobody. Because everyone is watching us, waiting for us to fail. Thomas was quiet for a moment, studying her face. Then he smiled, a real smile that reached his eyes. You know what I like about you, Vivien? You didn't lie to me just now. You could have. You could have said all the right things, played the part perfectly. But you told me the truth, even though it wasn't the answer I was fishing for. What were you fishing for? Honesty. That's all I've ever wanted for Julian. Someone honest. Someone real. He looked back through the glass doors to where Julian stood talking to business associates. Veronica was many things, but honest wasn't one of them. She wanted the Blackwood name, the fortune, the status. She didn't want Julian. And you think I do? I think you see him as a person, not a stepping stone. That's a good start. Thomas patted her hand. Come to dinner at the estate next weekend. The whole family will be there. If you can survive my daughter's interrogation and my granddaughter's protective instincts, you'll survive anything. Before Vivien could respond, Julian appeared at the terrace door. Grandfather, they're about to start the auction. You're supposed to give the opening remarks. Always working, Thomas said to Vivien with a wink. Come on then. Let's go do our duty. As they walked back inside, Thomas pulled Julian aside briefly. Vivien couldn't hear what was said, but she saw Julian's surprised expression, saw Thomas clap him on the shoulder, saw something pass between them that looked like approval. Julian returned to her side as Thomas headed toward the stage. Now, I want to pause and ask you something. Have you ever had to convince someone that your relationship was real when you weren't even sure yourself? Have you ever felt yourself falling for someone you were supposed to keep at a distance? This story is about to get more complicated. If you want to see what happens next, subscribe to the channel and drop a comment telling me what you think Vivien should do. Should she protect her heart or let herself fall? What did he say? Vivien whispered. Julian's expression was unreadable. He said you're either the best actress he's ever met, or I'm the luckiest man in this room. He paused. He also said if I hurt you, he'll give the company to Grace instead. He was joking. He wasn't. Julian took her hand, threading his fingers through hers. Which means we must be doing something right. As Thomas began his speech, Vivien felt the warmth of Julian's hand in hers. Felt the solidness of him beside her. And wondered when exactly she'd started to forget this was supposed to be pretend. The week following the gala fell into a pattern that felt strangely domestic. Vivien spent her mornings at the hospital with Marcus, who was recovering rapidly. Julian would arrive around lunch with food from different restaurants, claiming he was conducting research on the best meals for growing boys. Marcus adored him, and Vivien found herself watching their interactions with a warmth she hadn't expected. So if I add more RAM to my computer, Marcus was saying, his laptop open on the hospital bed, the programs will run faster? Exactly, Julian said, leaning over to look at the screen. But you also need to consider your processor speed and graphics card. It's all about balance. Like a team, Marcus said. Every part doing its job. Just like a team. Julian glanced at Vivien and smiled. Something flipped in her chest. These moments were happening more frequently. Moments when Julian wasn't performing, wasn't the billionaire CEO, but just a man who seemed to genuinely enjoy spending time with her and her brother. Moments when Vivien forgot to maintain her guard. I have meetings this afternoon, Julian said, checking his watch. But I'll be back for dinner. Marcus, you want me to bring that book you mentioned? The one about coding for beginners? Yes, please. After Julian left, Marcus turned to Vivien with a knowing look. What? She asked. You like him? Of course I like him. He's my boyfriend. No, I mean you really like him. I can tell. Vivien busied herself adjusting Marcus's pillows. You should rest. Doctor said you need plenty of sleep. Vivi. Marcus's voice was serious. He's good for you. I haven't seen you this happy in years. Not since before Mom and Dad died. The observation hit her hard because it was true. Despite the charade, despite the pretense, she was happy. Happier than she'd been in 3 years of struggling and surviving. It's complicated, Vivien said softly. What? Because he's rich? Because you think you don't deserve him? Marcus reached for her hand. You deserve to be happy. You deserve someone who treats you well. He does that. If only Marcus knew the truth. That Julian was treating her well because they had a contract, because he needed her as much as she needed him. But looking at her brother's hopeful expression, Vivien couldn't bring herself to shatter the illusion. Get some rest, she said, kissing his forehead. I'll be back tonight. The penthouse felt quiet when she returned. Vivien wandered through the spaces that were starting to feel familiar. The kitchen where she made coffee every morning, the living room where she and Julian practiced their story, the terrace where she'd sit in the evenings and watch the city lights. She found herself in Julian's home office, a room she usually avoided. Photos lined one wall. Julian with his grandfather at various company milestones, Julian with his sister Grace at what looked like a charity event, a younger Julian with his parents before his father died. Looking for something? Vivien spun around to find Julian in the doorway, his suit jacket gone, sleeves rolled up. I thought you had meetings all afternoon. They finished early. I came home to change before dinner. He stepped into the office. You're allowed in here, you know. You live here. It feels private. It is. But you're not an intruder. He moved to stand beside her, looking at the photos. That one was taken the day the company went public. I was 28 and convinced I knew everything. You look happy. I was terrified. Grandfather had just handed me control of everything he'd built. The pressure was enormous. Is that when Veronica came into your life? A year later. She was dating one of my business partners. We'd see each other at events, started talking. It was convenient more than anything else. Her family's connections, my need for stability. That sounds lonely. Julian looked at her, his expression unguarded. It was. But I told myself it was worth it. The company was growing. We were innovating. Making a difference. Personal happiness seemed like a luxury I couldn't afford. And now I'm standing in my office with a woman who's supposed to be fake but feels more real than any relationship I've ever had. The words hung between them. That terrifies me. Vivien's breath caught. Julian? I know this is an arrangement. I know we have an end date. I know this isn't supposed to be real. He turned to face her fully. But somewhere between practicing our story and watching you with your brother, I forgot to keep my distance. Me too, Vivien whispered. I keep telling myself this is temporary, that I need to protect myself. But then you do something thoughtful, or you make Marcus laugh, or you look at me like you're looking at me right now, and I forget every reason I should stay detached. They stood inches apart. Vivien could see the conflict in Julian's eyes, the same conflict she felt. Wanting something that didn't fit the parameters they'd set. Feeling something that wasn't part of their contract. This complicates things, Julian said. I know. We should probably step back. Maintain professional boundaries. We should. Neither of them moved. Julian's hand came up slowly, giving her time to pull away. When she didn't, his fingers brushed her cheek, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. The gesture was so gentle that Vivien's eyes closed involuntarily. Vivien. Her name on his lips sounded like a question. Before she could answer, his phone rang, shattering the moment. Julian stepped back, pulling the phone from his pocket. It's Grace. I should take this. Vivien nodded, not trusting her voice. As Julian left the room, she released the breath she'd been holding. What were they doing? Falling for each other wasn't part of the plan. It created risks, vulnerabilities, the potential for real heartbreak when this inevitably ended. But as she stood in his office, surrounded by pieces of his life, Vivien couldn't deny what was happening. She was falling for Julian Blackwood. Not the billionaire CEO, not the man who'd saved her brother, but the person beneath all of that. The man who stayed at hospitals, who patiently explained technology to a 12-year-old, who looked at her like she mattered. Julian returned a few minutes later, his expression troubled. That was Grace. The family dinner at the estate has been moved up to tomorrow night. Apparently, my mother has been calling daily demanding to meet you, and Grace can only deflect for so long. Tomorrow? Vivien's anxiety spiked. I thought we had more time to prepare. So did I. But my mother is persistent when she wants something. Julian ran a hand through his hair. We'll spend tonight rehearsing. Going over everything you need to know about the family, about how to handle their questions. They ordered dinner and spread out in the living room with notebooks and photos. Julian walked Vivien through his family tree, shared stories about his mother's art obsession and Grace's fierce loyalty, explained the dynamics that had shaped his childhood. My mother will ask about wedding plans, Julian said. She's traditional that way. When she hears we've been dating for 3 months, she'll want to know our timeline. What should I say? That we're taking things one step at a time. That we want to be sure before making such a big decision. Is that what you want? To be sure first. Julian looked at her for a long moment. I don't know anymore. A week ago, I would have said I never wanted a real marriage, just the appearance of one. Now I'm not so certain about anything. They worked late into the night, but the energy between them had shifted after their moment in the office. Every accidental touch felt charged. Every shared glance lasted a beat too long. Around midnight, Vivien yawned for the third time. "We should stop," Julian said. "You need sleep. Tomorrow will be intense." "I'm too nervous to sleep. Want to watch something? We could put on a movie, decompress before bed." They settled on the couch, a mindless comedy playing on the massive television. Vivien found herself relaxing into the cushions, into the moment. Halfway through the movie, her head drifted onto Julian's shoulder. His arm came around her, natural and easy. "This is nice," she murmured. "It is. Julian? What happens if this becomes real? If we both want it to be more than an arrangement?" His hand traced gentle patterns on her arm. "I don't know. We'd have to figure it out together. Renegotiate our terms. And if it doesn't work? If we try for real and fail? Then at least we tried. At least we didn't walk away wondering what if." He paused. "But I don't want to pressure you, Vivien. You came into this needing help, not a real relationship. If you want to keep things as they are, I'll respect that." Vivien tilted her head to look up at him. "What do you want?" "I want to kiss you. Not for practice, not for appearances. Just because I want to." Her heart hammered. "Then do it." Julian's hand cupped her face, his thumb brushing her cheek. He leaned down slowly, giving her every opportunity to change her mind. When his lips met hers, it was gentle at first, tentative. Then Vivien's hand slid into his hair, and the kiss deepened into something that felt like falling and flying at the same time. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Julian rested his forehead against hers. "That changes things," he said softly. "I know. We don't have to decide everything tonight. We can take this slow, see where it goes. What about your grandfather's clause? The 6-month timeline. What about it? Whether this is real or not, we still need to convince my family we're together. The difference is now I actually want to convince them. Now I'm hoping this doesn't end when the 6 months are up." Vivien's chest felt tight with emotion. This wasn't how the plan was supposed to go. But life rarely followed plans, and maybe that wasn't such a bad thing. "I should go to bed," she said. "Big day tomorrow." "Vivien?" Julian caught her hand as she stood. "For what it's worth, I'm glad it was you. That night at the hospital, I could have approached anyone. But I'm glad it was you." "Me too," she whispered. In her room, Vivien lay awake for a long time, her fingers touching her lips where Julian had kissed her. Everything had changed with that kiss. The arrangement had become something more, something that felt fragile and precious and terrifying. Her phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. "Can't sleep. Too excited about getting discharged next week. Julian said he's setting up a room for me at the penthouse. Is that okay?" Vivien smiled. Julian hadn't mentioned that to her. Another thoughtful gesture, another reason her heart was in trouble. "More than okay," she texted back. "Now sleep. Doctor's orders." As she finally drifted off, Vivien's last thought was that she was in too deep now. The fake relationship had become real. And there was no going back. The Blackwood estate sat on 50 acres outside the city, a mansion that looked like it belonged in a different era. As Julian's car wound up the long driveway, Vivien's hands twisted in her lap. "They're going to love you," Julian said, covering her hand with his. "You don't know that. I know my family. My mother collects people with interesting stories. Grace respects honesty. And you've already won over my grandfather. What about your aunts? Uncles? You mentioned cousins. Most of them live abroad. Tonight it's just the core family." He pulled up to the front entrance. "Ready?" "No. But let's go anyway." The front door opened before they reached it. A woman in her early 60s stood there, elegant in a green dress, her dark hair streaked with gray and pulled into a soft chignon. Catherine Blackwood had the same sharp blue eyes as her son. "Julian." She embraced him warmly, then turned to Vivien with a smile. "And you must be Vivien. I'm Catherine. Please come in, come in. We're so excited to meet you." The entrance hall was stunning, with a curved staircase and artwork that Vivien suspected was worth more than most people's houses. Catherine linked arms with Vivien, gently separating her from Julian. "Let me steal you for a moment while Julian says hello to his grandfather. I want to show you my latest acquisition." Before Vivien could protest, she was being led down a hallway lined with paintings. Catherine stopped in front of a large abstract piece, blues and silvers swirling together. "What do you think?" Catherine asked. Vivien studied it honestly. "It's beautiful. The colors make me think of water and moonlight." There's movement in it like waves. Exactly. Catherine beamed. The artist said she was painting the ocean at night during a storm. You have a good eye. She turned to face Vivien. Now tell me honestly. Are you prepared for this family? We can be overwhelming. I'm prepared to try. Good answer. Catherine's expression softened. Julian has been alone for too long, surrounded by people who want things from him. When I heard about how you met, I was skeptical. It seemed too convenient, too fast. Vivien's heart sank. Had Catherine already seen through them? But then Thomas told me about your conversation at the gala. About how you admitted you weren't sure if you loved Julian yet. That honesty impressed me. Catherine took Vivien's hand. I'm not asking you to promise me forever. I'm asking you to be genuine with my son. Don't pretend feelings you don't have, but don't hide the ones you do. Can you do that? I can, Vivien said, meaning it. Then we'll get along beautifully. Come, let's join the others before Grace sends out a search party. The living room was enormous, with comfortable furniture arranged around a fireplace large enough to stand in. Thomas stood by the bar fixing drinks. Julian was talking to a younger woman with dark hair and her father's blue eyes, Grace. Grace looked up as they entered, and Vivien felt the assessment immediately. This was the protective sister Julian had warned her about. Vivien, Grace said, standing. I'm Grace. It's nice to finally meet the woman who's caused such a stir. They shook hands. Grace's grip was firm, her smile polite but guarded. I've heard wonderful things about your foundation work, Vivien said. Julian mentioned you focus on education initiatives. I do. It's important to create opportunities for kids who wouldn't otherwise have them. Grace tilted her head slightly. Speaking of which, I understand you have a younger brother? How's he doing? Much better. He was discharged from the hospital yesterday. The surgery was successful. That must have been terrifying for you. Being responsible for a child at such a young age. It was. But Marcus is worth it. He's resilient and brilliant. Reminds me why I do everything I do. And now Julian's helping support him? There it was, the real question beneath the polite conversation. Was Vivien using Julian for his resources? Julian has been incredibly generous, Vivien said carefully. But I'm not with him because of what he can provide for Marcus. I'm with him because he makes me want to be better. Because he sees me as a person, not just a problem to solve. Grace studied her for a long moment, then smiled, this time with genuine warmth. Good. He needs someone who challenges him. All the women he's dated before just agreed with everything he said. Even Veronica? Especially Veronica. She was calculating, always positioning herself for maximum advantage. You don't strike me as calculating. I'm too tired to calculate. Life's been about survival, not strategy. Grace laughed. I like you. Fair warning though, if you hurt my brother, I will make your life very difficult. I have resources and no qualms about using them. Grace, Julian appeared at Vivien's side. Stop interrogating her. I'm not interrogating. I'm getting to know her. There's a difference. Dinner was served in a formal dining room with a table that could seat 20. The 5 of them clustered at one end, creating an intimate atmosphere despite the grand setting. The conversation flowed easily. Catherine's stories about her latest gallery opening, Grace's updates on foundation projects, Thomas's opinions on market trends. Vivien found herself relaxing, contributing to conversations, even laughing at Thomas's dry humor. These people weren't the intimidating billionaires she'd expected. They were a family with inside jokes and comfortable dynamics and genuine affection for each other. So Vivien, Catherine said as dessert was served, Julian mentioned you were studying nursing before your parents passed. Do you plan to return to school? The question caught Vivien off guard. In all their planning, they hadn't discussed her future beyond the 6-month arrangement. I'd like to, she said honestly. But with Marcus still recovering, school isn't practical right now. Maybe once he's older, more independent. What if you could do both? Grace asked. What if there was a way to pursue your degree while still being available for Marcus? I don't see how. Online programs. Flexible scheduling. My foundation actually has a scholarship initiative for people in situations like yours. Adults who had to pause their education due to family circumstances. Vivien looked at Julian, who seemed as surprised as she was. I didn't know you had that program, he said to Grace. We just launched it last quarter. The board approved it based on research showing how many talented people never complete their degrees because of caring for family members. Grace turned back to Vivien. If you're interested, I'd be happy to connect you with the program coordinator. That would be amazing. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. You'd have to apply like everyone else, meet the qualifications. But from what Julian's told me about you, I think you'd be a strong candidate. Catherine reached over and squeezed Vivien's hand. A nurse. That's wonderful. We need more compassionate healthcare workers. I always thought so, Vivien said softly. After my parents died, the nurses at the hospital were so kind to Marcus. I wanted to be that for other people. Someone who helps during the worst moments. You'll make an excellent nurse, Thomas said. You have the temperament for it. Calm under pressure. The compliment meant more than Thomas could know. These people, Julian's family, were accepting her not because of Julian but because of who she was. The realization made her chest tight. After dinner, Grace pulled Vivien aside while Julian helped his mother select wine for the sitting room. I owe you an apology, Grace said. I was suspicious of you when I first heard about this relationship. The timing seemed off. I understand. You're protecting your brother. I am. But I was also projecting. Veronica hurt him, made him even more guarded than he already was. I didn't want to see him go through that again. Grace leaned against the hallway wall. But watching you two tonight, the way you look at each other, the way he touches your hand when he thinks no one's watching, that's not fake. Vivien's pulse quickened. Grace. I'm not asking for details. I just want you to know that I see it. Whatever started this relationship, it's become something real. And I'm glad. Julian deserves someone who makes him happy. You do that. He makes me happy too. Good. Then we're on the same team. Grace smiled. Fair warning. My mother is about to bring up weddings. She can't help herself. Just smile and nod. She means well. They returned to the sitting room where Catherine was indeed discussing wedding venues with Thomas, who looked amused by his daughter's enthusiasm. I'm not saying you should get married tomorrow, Catherine said as Vivien and Grace entered. But when the time comes, the gardens here would be beautiful. We could do a spring ceremony, maybe April or May. Mother, Julian said with exasperated affection. We've been together 3 months. Yes, and you're not getting any younger. Neither of you are. I'm 34, not ancient. And Vivien is 24. Perfect ages to start a family. Vivien nearly choked on her wine. Family? They'd barely figured out if this relationship was real. Catherine, you're terrifying them, Thomas said with a chuckle. Give the young people some breathing room. I'm just saying it's something to think about. Julian, you know the clause. You need to be in a committed relationship by your birthday. A wedding would certainly satisfy that requirement. The clause says committed relationship, not marriage, Julian pointed out. True, but marriage shows permanence. Stability. The board would see it as you fully embracing the responsibility of leadership. The conversation continued, but Vivien's mind was racing. Marriage. The word shouldn't have made her stomach flip. This was still an arrangement, still temporary. Except it didn't feel temporary anymore. Not after last night's kiss, not after the way Julian looked at her across the dinner table, not after meeting his family and feeling like she belonged. I think we should head back, Julian said, rescuing her. Vivien needs to check on Marcus and I have early meetings tomorrow. Goodbyes were warm. Catherine kissed Vivien's cheek and made her promise to come back soon. Grace slipped her the foundation coordinator's contact information. Thomas walked them to the door. You did well tonight, he told Vivien. You held your own with this group. That's not easy. They're wonderful, Vivien said honestly. Thank you for welcoming me. Thank Julian. He chose well. Thomas clapped his grandson on the shoulder. Don't mess this up, boy. In the car driving back to the city, Vivien and Julian were quiet. The evening had been wonderful but also overwhelming. The weight of what they were building, what it meant, hung between them. Your family is incredible, Vivien finally said. They like you. Really like you. Grace doesn't open up to people easily, and she was already planning your future education by dessert. About that, she doesn't actually expect me to apply for that scholarship, does she? Given our arrangement. Julian glanced at her. Why wouldn't you apply? If you want to finish your degree, you should. Regardless of what happens with us. But if we're not really together after 6 months, then we're not. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't pursue your goals. Apply for the scholarship. Go back to school. Build the life you want. I'll support that either way. The casual way he said it, the certainty that he'd support her even after their arrangement ended, made Vivien's throat tight. Thank you, she whispered. They drove in comfortable silence for a while. Then Julian spoke again, his voice thoughtful. My mother brought up an interesting point tonight. About the clause. About marriage satisfying it? Yes. I've been thinking. He trailed off, then tried again. If we did get married, it would solve a lot of problems. The board, my grandfather, public perception. Vivien's heart hammered. Are you proposing? No. Not yet. Maybe not ever. I'm just thinking out loud. He pulled up to a stoplight and turned to look at her. But if I did propose, if I asked you for real this time, what would you say? It was an impossible question. A week ago she would have said it was too soon, too fast, too complicated. Now, after meeting his family, after kissing him, after feeling what she felt, I don't know, she admitted. Ask me again when we're both sure what's real and what's part of the arrangement. Julian nodded slowly. Fair enough. But as they drove the rest of the way home, Vivien couldn't stop thinking about the question. About what it would mean to marry Julian Blackwood. Not for show, not for the arrangement, but for real. And she couldn't shake the feeling that she already knew her answer. She was just too scared to admit it. The media attention after the family dinner intensified. Photos of Vivien and Julian leaving the estate appeared in every gossip column. Headlines speculated about engagement timelines. Social media dissected every detail of Vivien's dress, her background, her worthiness to be with Julian Blackwood. Most of it was noise Vivien learned to ignore. But 3 weeks after the dinner, everything changed. She was at the penthouse with Marcus, who'd moved into his new room with enthusiasm. He'd covered one wall with posters of tech companies and was already planning modifications to his computer setup. Vivien was helping him organize when her phone exploded with notifications. What's happening? Marcus asked, looking up from his laptop. Vivien's hands shook as she scrolled through messages. Dozens of them, all containing links to the same article. The headline made her stomach drop. Billionaire's gold digger girlfriend. The truth about Vivien Torres. The article was vicious. It detailed her financial struggles, her debts, the timing of Marcus's surgery and Julian's involvement. It painted her as a calculating opportunist who'd trapped Julian when he was vulnerable after his breakup. Worst of all, it included interviews with unnamed sources close to the situation claiming Vivien had admitted the relationship was fake. Vivi? You okay? Marcus's worried voice cut through her panic. I'm fine. Just some stupid gossip. She tried to keep her voice steady. Keep working on your setup. I need to make a phone call. In her room she called Julian. He answered on the first ring. I'm already dealing with it, he said before she could speak. My lawyers are working on a retraction. We'll sue if necessary. Julian, the article says we're fake. Someone talked. Someone who knows the truth. Veronica. Has to be. She's been looking for ways to discredit us since the gala. But she doesn't know it's fake. She just suspects. Which is apparently enough for a gossip column with loose fact-checking standards. His voice was tight with anger. I'm on my way home. Don't respond to anything, don't read the comments, just wait for me. But Vivien couldn't help reading the comments. Thousands of them, most cruel. They called her a leech, a con artist, a woman using a kind man for his money. They picked apart her appearance, her background, everything about her. The worst part was that some of it was true. She had needed Julian's money. She had accepted his help without hesitation. The relationship had started as an arrangement. How could she defend herself without exposing the truth? Julian arrived an hour later, his expression stormy. He found Vivien sitting on her bedroom floor, her phone finally set aside. Hey. He knelt beside her. Talk to me. What if they're right? They're not. But they are, Julian. Not about everything but about how we started. I did need your money. You did pay for Marcus's surgery. We did enter into an arrangement. An arrangement that became something real. That matters. Does it? The foundation is still built on a lie. If people knew the truth. They won't know. Veronica can speculate all she wants, but she has no proof. My lawyers will handle this. At what cost? Vivien looked up at him. Your reputation, your company, your family's trust. Is protecting me worth all that? Yes. His answer was immediate, certain. Vivien, you're not a gold digger. You're a woman who made an impossible choice to save her brother. There's no shame in that. The internet disagrees. The internet is full of people who hide behind screens and judge situations they don't understand. Their opinions don't matter. But they did matter. They mattered because they affected Julian's image, his business relationships, his standing in a world that valued perception as much as reality. Maybe we should end this, Vivien heard herself say. Before it gets worse. Before Veronica digs up more information or finds actual proof. Julian's expression hardened. You want to walk away? I want to protect you. And Marcus. If this scandal grows, if it affects your business or brings reporters to Marcus's school. So your solution is to run? My solution is to be practical. You said yourself this was a 6-month arrangement. We're almost at 4 months. Maybe we accelerate the timeline, stage a breakup now, let things cool down. Julian stood, pacing across the room. And what about what's happened between us? What about the fact that this stopped being fake weeks ago? Did it? Or did we just get caught up in playing our roles so well we convinced ourselves? Don't do that. Don't diminish what we have because you're scared. I'm not scared. I'm being realistic. This article is just the beginning. Veronica won't stop. The media won't stop. Eventually they'll find something we can't explain away. Let them try. I don't care what they write about me. But I care what they write about you. Vivien stood to face him. You're Julian Blackwood. You built a tech empire. You employ thousands of people. Your reputation matters for more than just your ego. And I'm the girl dragging that reputation through the mud. You're the woman I. He stopped, jaw clenching. This is what Veronica wants. She wants us to doubt each other, to fracture what we've built. If we walk away now, she wins. Maybe she should win. Maybe that's the smart play. Smart. Julian laughed bitterly. We've been playing smart for months. Calculating every move, planning every appearance. I'm tired of smart, Vivien. For once in my life, I want to do something because it feels right, not because it's strategically sound. And what feels right to you? You. This. Fighting for what we have instead of letting other people's opinions destroy it. Vivien wanted to believe him. Wanted to trust that they could weather this storm. But the weight of the article, of the comments, of the reality of their situation pressed down on her. I need time to think, she said. About whether staying is fair to you, to Marcus, to everyone involved. How much time? I don't know. A few days? A week? Julian's expression shifted from angry to hurt. You're going to leave. I'm going to stay with Marcus at my old apartment for a while. Give us both space to think clearly. Running away isn't thinking clearly. Neither is pretending we can just push through this like nothing's wrong. They stood in tense silence. Everything they'd built over the past months felt fragile, ready to shatter with one wrong word. If you go, Julian said quietly, people will assume the article was true. They'll assume you were using me and got caught. Maybe that's better than them eventually finding proof we were lying. So you'd rather people think you're a gold digger than risk them learning the full truth? Put that way it sounded cowardly. But Vivien couldn't shake the feeling that protecting Julian meant removing herself from the equation. I need to pack some things, she said. Marcus and I will go tonight. Vivien. Don't do this. I'm sorry. She moved past him toward Marcus's room, her heart breaking with every step. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. They were supposed to have 6 months, supposed to figure out their feelings, supposed to have time. Marcus was upset when she told him they were leaving. But I like it here. And what about Julian? You can't just leave him. It's complicated, Marcus. It's not. You love him and he loves you. That's not complicated. Out of the mouths of 12-year-olds. If only it were that simple. As they packed, Julian retreated to his office. He didn't try to stop her again, didn't argue. The silence was worse than any fight would have been. When they were ready to leave, Vivien found him standing by the windows, looking out at the city. Julian. Go, he said without turning. If you think leaving is the right choice, then go. I won't stop you. This doesn't mean we're over. I just need to think. Thinking apart is just another way of saying goodbye. Now he turned, and the pain in his eyes made Vivien's breath catch. But if that's what you need, I understand. I'm sorry. Stop apologizing. You're making a choice. Own it. The words stung because they were true. She was choosing to run instead of fight. Choosing fear over faith. But what else could she do? In the elevator going down, Marcus was silent. In the car ride to their old apartment, which Julian insisted on arranging despite everything, Marcus stared out the window. Not until they were inside the small studio, surrounded by boxes they'd never fully unpacked, did he finally speak. You made a mistake. Marcus. You did. Julian is the best thing that happened to us, and you left because of what strangers on the internet said. That's stupid. Watch your language. It is stupid. Do you love him? Vivien sank onto the couch. Did she love Julian? Somewhere between the fake dates and real conversations, between playing pretend and feeling genuine, she'd fallen. Completely, terrifyingly, irreversibly. Yes, she whispered. I do. Then why did we leave? Because loving him doesn't solve our problems. It doesn't change how we started or the lies we told. It doesn't protect him from the fallout when the truth comes out. So you left to protect him? By breaking his heart. Vivien had no answer to that. She told herself she was being selfless, practical, smart. But maybe she was just being a coward. Her phone buzzed. A text from Julian, your account. The final payment per our contract. You earned it. $300,000 had just appeared in her banking app. She stared at the number through tears. He'd paid her in full despite their arrangement being incomplete. Despite her leaving. Despite everything. A second text followed. The scholarship application for Grace's program is attached. She already put you on the priority list. Don't waste it. And a third, take care of yourself and Marcus. If you need anything ever, call me. I meant what I said about supporting you either way. Vivien clutched the phone, tears falling freely now. She'd left to protect him, but she'd hurt them both instead. And she had no idea how to fix it. 3 days after leaving the penthouse, Vivien still felt like she'd made the worst mistake of her life. Marcus barely spoke to her. Her phone stayed silent. She'd convinced herself that walking away was noble, but alone in her small apartment, it just felt like failure. She was working on the scholarship application when her phone finally rang. Not Julian as she'd hoped, but Grace. We need to talk, Grace said without preamble. Can you meet me for coffee in an hour? Vivien agreed, her stomach in knots. Had Grace called to tell her to stay away from Julian? To express disappointment? She arrived at the coffee shop to find Grace already there, 2 cups on the table. Sit, Grace said. It wasn't a request. Vivien sat, bracing herself. Julian looks terrible, Grace began. He's thrown himself into work, barely sleeping, snapping at everyone. My brother's been through breakups before, but this is different. This is breaking him. I didn't mean to hurt him. Then why did you leave? Vivien explained the article, the pressure, her fear of damaging Julian's reputation further. As she talked, Grace's expression shifted from stern to thoughtful. So you left because you love him, Grace said when Vivien finished. I left because staying was selfish. No, staying and fighting would have been brave. Leaving was the selfish option because it protected you from having to face the consequences together. Grace leaned forward. Vivien, do you know why Julian's been hurt before? Why he built such high walls around himself? Veronica? Not just Veronica. His entire life, people have wanted him for what he could provide. Business connections, money, status. Even Veronica, who claimed to love him, was really in love with being Mrs. Blackwood. Grace's expression softened. Then you came along. Yes, you needed his help. Yes, there was an arrangement. But somewhere in there, you started seeing Julian, not just his bank account. You challenged him, made him laugh, treated him like a person instead of a walking ATM. I do see him. The real him. Then why are you here instead of with him? Why are you letting Veronica's vindictiveness dictate your choices? Because I'm scared. Scared of making things worse. Scared of not being enough for his world. Scared that eventually he'll realize I really am just some waitress who got lucky. Lucky. Grace's laugh was sharp. Vivien, my brother doesn't do anything based on luck. He's methodical, calculated, careful. The fact that he fell for you wasn't luck. It was inevitable because you're exactly what he needed. Someone real in a world of facades. Vivien wiped at her eyes. I don't know how to fix this. I don't know how to go back after walking away. You start by being honest. Completely honest. With Julian, with my family, with yourself. Grace pulled out her phone. There's something you should see. She turned the screen to show an email. It was addressed to the board of Blackwood Industries and copied to major shareholders. The sender, Thomas Blackwood. Vivien read with growing shock. Thomas had written a detailed explanation of Julian's relationship with Vivien, acknowledging that yes, it had begun as an arrangement to satisfy the inheritance clause. But he defended both of them, explaining how genuine love had developed, how Vivien had never taken advantage, how Julian had never been happier. Your grandfather knows? Vivien breathed. He's known for weeks. He's not stupid and he's been watching you both carefully. He sent this email this morning after Julian came to him last night and told him everything. Grace took her phone back. The board meeting is tomorrow. Grandfather is proposing they remove the relationship clause entirely, arguing that Julian's proven his commitment to the company's future regardless of his personal life. What did they say? Most are on board. A few are suspicious but willing to listen. Veronica's father, who sits on the board, is predictably opposed. But grandfather has enough support to push it through. So Julian doesn't need me anymore. The clause might be removed. Is that really what you took from this? Grace shook her head. He doesn't need you for the clause. He needs you because he loves you. But he's too proud to chase after someone who walked away. I didn't know what else to do. You fight. You stand beside him at that board meeting tomorrow and tell the truth together. You show Veronica and everyone else that what you have is real, regardless of how it started. What if they don't believe me? What if they do? Grace stood. I'll send you the meeting details. 9 a.m. tomorrow at company headquarters. Julian doesn't know you're coming. You can surprise him or you can let him face it alone. Your choice. After Grace left, Vivien sat with her cold coffee, staring at nothing. She thought about Julian standing in front of his board, defending their relationship. She thought about him alone in that penthouse, working until exhaustion. She thought about the man who'd stayed at the hospital with her brother, who'd kissed her like she was precious, who'd looked at her like she mattered. Marcus was right. She'd made a mistake, and it was time to fix it. That evening she worked on a speech. What would she say to the board? How could she explain the arrangement without making it sound mercenary? She wrote and rewrote, crossing out lines and starting over. Finally, she gave up on preparation and decided to just speak from her heart. Whatever happened, she'd tell the truth. All of it. The next morning, Vivien dressed carefully in a navy blue suit she'd bought for court hearings when applying for guardianship of Marcus. It was simple, professional, and armor against her nerves. She left Marcus with a neighbor, promising to explain everything when she returned. Blackwood Industries headquarters was a gleaming tower of glass and steel. The lobby alone was intimidating, all marble and modern art. Vivien gave her name to security, her heart hammering. Grace met her at the elevator. You came. I came. Julian's already in the boardroom. He has no idea you're here. I haven't told anyone. They rode the elevator in silence. On the 40th floor, Grace led her down a corridor to massive wooden doors. They started 10 minutes ago. Grandfather is presenting his proposal. Grace squeezed her hand. This is brave what you're doing. Or stupid. Often the same thing. Grace pushed open the doors. The boardroom was exactly what Vivien expected. Enormous table, leather chairs, 15 people in expensive suits. Julian stood at the front beside his grandfather, mid-presentation. His eyes found her immediately, widening with shock. Everyone turned to look. I'm sorry to interrupt, Vivien said, her voice somehow steady. But I need to say something. I'm Vivien Torres, and I'm the reason you're all here discussing Julian's personal life. Thomas looked amused. Grace was smiling. Julian looked like he couldn't decide if he wanted to kiss her or yell at her. Miss Torres, a man at the table said, his tone cold. Vivien recognized him from photos. Richard Ashford, Veronica's father. This is a private board meeting. I know. But you're discussing my relationship with Julian, and I believe I have the right to address it directly. She walked forward, trying not to show her shaking hands. Mr. Blackwood, all of you, I'm not here to defend myself or to beg for approval. I'm here to tell you the truth. We know the truth, Ashford said. You're a gold digger who saw an opportunity and took it. Richard, Thomas's voice was sharp. Let her speak. Vivien looked at Julian. He gave her the smallest nod and she drew strength from it. Julian and I met the night his engagement to Veronica ended. My brother needed emergency heart surgery, and I had no way to pay for it. Julian offered me a deal, pretend to be his girlfriend for 6 months, and he'd pay for everything Marcus needed. Murmurs around the table. Someone whispered, I knew it. I accepted without hesitation because my brother's life was worth more than my pride. Was it mercenary? Yes. Was it calculated? Absolutely. But it was also desperate and necessary and the only choice I had. So you admit you were using him, Ashford said triumphantly. At first, yes. But something unexpected happened. We spent time together. Julian met Marcus, came to the hospital, became part of our lives. He was kind when he didn't have to be. Thoughtful when it served no purpose. He made me laugh, challenged me, saw me as a person instead of a problem. She turned to face Julian directly now, forgetting the board, speaking only to him. I fell in love with you. Not because you paid for Marcus's surgery, not because of the penthouse or the allowance or any of it. I fell in love because of how you talked to my brother about computers, because you stayed at the hospital even when you didn't have to, because you look at me like I'm worth something. Because you're brilliant and funny and kind in ways you don't show the world. Julian's expression was unreadable, but his hands gripped the edge of the table. I left because I was scared. Scared of the media attention, scared of damaging your reputation, scared that I wasn't enough for your world. I convinced myself that walking away was noble, that I was protecting you. But I was just being a coward. I was running from the best thing that ever happened to me because I didn't think I deserved it. Vivien turned back to the board. You want to know if I'm using Julian? Yes, I'm using his strength when mine fails. I'm using his confidence to build my own. I'm using his love to become a better person. And he's using me too, using my honesty to remember what real connection feels like, using my presence to remember he's more than just a CEO. That's what love is, mutual use in the best possible way. This is very touching, Ashford said sarcastically. But it doesn't change the fact that your relationship is built on deception. How can this board trust Julian's judgment when he's been lying to everyone for months? Because he did what was necessary to protect what he built, Thomas said, standing. Julian faced an impossible situation: lose the company or find a partner. He found a creative solution. Some might call it dishonest. I call it strategic. You're defending this? Another board member asked. I'm saying the clause was my mistake. I wanted Julian to find love, so I tried to force it through inheritance requirements. That was wrong. Love can't be mandated or scheduled. It develops in its own time in unexpected ways. Thomas looked at Julian and Vivien. These two found something real despite the circumstances. That's what matters. The shareholders will never accept this, Ashford argued. Then let them vote me out, Julian said, speaking for the first time since Vivien entered. I'm not willing to sacrifice Vivien to appease people who don't understand the situation. If this board requires me to end my relationship to maintain my position, then I choose her over the company. Shocked silence. Julian, Thomas said quietly. You don't mean that. I do. Grandfather, you built this company to create something meaningful, to make a difference. But you also taught me that some things are more important than business. Family. Love. Integrity. Julian moved to stand beside Vivien. I love this woman. If choosing her means stepping down, I'll do it. Grace can run the company. She's more than capable. Hold on, Grace said. I appreciate the confidence, but let's not be hasty. This is ridiculous, Ashford said. All of this over some girl he barely knows? Watch your tone, Julian's voice was ice. Enough. Thomas held up his hand. I propose we vote on removing the relationship clause entirely. Julian has proven his commitment to this company through years of exceptional leadership. His personal life is his own business. All in favor? Slowly, hands rose around the table. 9 out of 15. Then 10. 11. Finally 13. Only Ashford and one other abstained. Motion carries, Thomas said. The clause is removed. Julian, your position is secure regardless of your relationship status. Julian barely heard him. He was looking at Vivien, really looking at her, like he was memorizing every detail. Can we talk? He asked quietly. Privately? Yes. They left the boardroom together, walked down the corridor in silence, and stepped into Julian's office. The door had barely closed before he spoke. You came. I came. Why? Because I love you. Because I was wrong to leave. Because fighting together is better than protecting alone. Julian crossed the space between them, his hands cupping her face. I thought I'd lost you. You almost did. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry for running, for doubting us, for everything. Don't apologize. You were scared. I understand scared. I don't want to be scared anymore. I want to try this for real. No contract, no timeline, no arrangement. Just us. Us, Julian repeated like he was testing the word. I like the sound of that. When he kissed her, it was different from their first kiss. This one was a promise, a beginning, a choice they were both making with open eyes. So what now? Vivien asked when they finally pulled apart. Now we figure it out together. No more running, no more pretending. We're real now in every way that matters. Your board might not all agree. Ashford certainly doesn't. Let him disagree. I have you. That's what matters. Through the office window, Vivien could see the city stretching out below, full of possibilities. They'd started with a desperate deal, but they'd found something neither expected. A partnership built on honesty, a love that developed despite impossible odds. There's one more thing, Julian said. Something I should have done properly the first time. He pulled a small box from his desk drawer, opening it to reveal a simple but elegant ring. This isn't for show. This isn't about the claws or appearances. This is me asking if you'll marry me for real because I love you and want to build a life with you. Vivien looked at the ring, at Julian, at the future suddenly opening before her. 6 months ago she'd been desperate and alone. Now she was standing in a billionaire's office, being offered everything she'd never dared to dream about. "Yes," she said. "Yes, I'll marry you." As Julian slid the ring onto her finger, Vivien thought about how strangely life worked. Sometimes the worst moments led to the best outcomes. Sometimes desperation led to love. Sometimes fake relationships became the most real thing in your life. And sometimes, just sometimes, the end of one story was really just the beginning of another. The ring on Vivien's finger felt like a promise and a question all at once. She kept looking at it as they left Blackwood Industries, as Julian drove them back to the penthouse, as they rode the elevator up. This was real now. No contract, no timeline, no pretense. "Marcus doesn't know yet," Vivien said as Julian opened the penthouse door. "I haven't told him about leaving or coming back or any of this." "Then let's go tell him together. If he's going to be my little brother, he should probably know I'm marrying his sister." The casual way Julian said "little brother" made Vivien's heart squeeze. They'd started as strangers with a business arrangement. Now they were becoming a family. They picked up Marcus from the neighbor's apartment. He looked between them suspiciously. "What's going on?" "Get your stuff," Vivien said. "We're going home." "To the penthouse?" "To the penthouse." Marcus whooped and ran to pack his things, which he'd refused to fully unpack at the old apartment. Within 10 minutes they were back in Julian's car. "So you guys figured it out?" Marcus asked from the back seat. "You're not being dumb anymore?" "Watch it," Vivien said, but she was smiling. "We figured it out," Julian confirmed. "And there's something else. Something we want to tell you." Back at the penthouse they sat Marcus down in the living room. Vivien showed him the ring. "Julian asked me to marry him. For real this time, not for show. What do you think?" Marcus's grin could have lit the entire city. "I think yes. Obviously yes. Can I be in the wedding?" "You'll be the best man," Julian said. "If that's okay with you." "Really? Not your business partner or someone important?" "Marcus, you are someone important. You're about to be my family. That makes you more important than any business partner." Marcus launched himself at Julian, hugging him fiercely. Vivien watched with tears in her eyes as Julian hugged her brother back, this man who'd entered their lives as a stranger and become essential. Over the next few weeks, everything shifted into place. Vivien applied for Grace's scholarship program and was accepted. She enrolled in online nursing courses, finally returning to the dream she'd put on hold. Marcus's health continued to improve, his energy and enthusiasm returning. Julian's proposal to remove the inheritance clause passed with the board. Ashford resigned in protest, but his departure strengthened rather than weakened the company. Without Veronica's father stirring up trouble, the business ran more smoothly. And through it all, Vivien and Julian learned to be a real couple. No more practicing conversations or rehearsing affection. They had real arguments about whose turn it was to do dishes. They binged terrible movies together. They stayed up late talking about everything and nothing. "I can't believe we almost gave this up," Vivien said one evening, curled against Julian on the couch. "Which part? The relationship or the chance to argue about whether pineapple belongs on pizza?" "Both. All of it. Us." Julian kissed her forehead. "We didn't give it up. That's what matters." But there was one more obstacle they hadn't addressed: Veronica. The article she'd planted had been retracted after Julian's lawyers got involved, but she'd been suspiciously quiet since then. Too quiet. Julian insisted she'd moved on, but Vivien couldn't shake the feeling they hadn't heard the last of her. She was right. 2 months after the board meeting, Vivien was at the hospital where she'd started her nursing clinical rotations when her phone rang. An unknown number. "Hello? Vivien Torres?" A woman's voice, professional and cool. "This is Amanda Chen from City Magazine. I'm calling about the story we're running tomorrow regarding you and Julian Blackwood." Vivien's stomach dropped. "What story?" "We've obtained records of the original agreement between you and Mr. Blackwood. Bank transfers, legal documents, everything. Our lawyers have confirmed their authenticity. We're giving you a chance to comment before publication." "Who gave you those documents?" "I can't reveal my sources. But I can tell you the story goes live tomorrow morning. It details the entire arrangement. The payment for your brother's surgery, the fake relationship, the timeline. Do you have a statement?" Vivien's hands shook. "I need to call you back." She immediately called Julian, explaining the situation. His response was immediate. "Come to the office. No. We're handling this together." In Julian's office 30 minutes later, they were joined by his lawyer, his PR team, and Grace. "How did they get those documents?" Vivien asked. I thought your lawyers had everything sealed. They did, the lawyer confirmed. But Veronica was with Julian when he first drafted the agreement. If she took photos or made copies before we secured everything, she could have held on to them, Grace finished, waiting for the right moment to use them. So what do we do? Vivien asked. The article comes out tomorrow. Everyone will know the truth. The PR team offered various strategies. Deny everything, claim the documents were forged, threaten legal action. But Julian shook his head to all of them. We tell the truth, he said. All of it. Julian, that's a huge risk, his lawyer argued. So is continuing to lie. Vivien and I started this relationship dishonestly. We've spent months building something real on that foundation. If we want a real future, we need to be honest about the past. The media will have a field day, the PR director warned. Let them. We'll do it on our terms, in our own words. Not through some magazine article, but directly. Julian looked at Vivien. If you're willing. She thought about it. About the scrutiny, the judgment, the inevitable criticism. But she also thought about starting their marriage with honesty, about not spending years looking over their shoulders waiting for the truth to come out. I'm willing, she said. What did you have in mind? A press conference. Tomorrow morning before their story drops. We tell everyone exactly what happened, how it happened, and what it became. That's bold, Grace said. I like it. They worked through the night, preparing a statement, coordinating with media outlets, setting up the press conference. At 2 a.m., exhausted and running on coffee, Vivien found Julian standing alone by his office window. Having second thoughts? She asked. About the press conference? No. About everything else? Constantly. He turned to her. I keep thinking about that night at the hospital. If I'd walked past you instead of stopping, if I'd chosen someone else, if any number of things had been different. But you didn't walk past. You stopped. You chose me. Best decision I ever made. Even with all this chaos, even with Veronica's vindictiveness and media scrutiny, I'd do it all again. Me too. They stood together, looking out at the city, drawing strength from each other for what was coming. The press conference was scheduled for 9 a.m. in the main conference room at Blackwood Industries. By 8:30 the room was packed with reporters, cameras and curious onlookers. Vivien wore a green dress that Grace had helped her pick out, simple but professional. Julian wore his standard suit but looked more nervous than she'd ever seen him. Ready? He asked, taking her hand. No. But let's do it anyway. They walked to the podium together. Flashes exploded. Questions were shouted. Julian held up a hand for silence. Thank you all for coming. Vivien and I have a statement to make regarding our relationship. He looked at her and she nodded. 4 months ago we entered into an arrangement. I needed a girlfriend to satisfy a clause in my grandfather's will. Vivien needed money for her brother's medical care. We agreed to pretend to be together for 6 months. The room erupted. Julian waited for quiet. What started as a business arrangement became something neither of us expected. We fell in love. Not because we planned to, not because it was convenient, but because we spent time together and discovered we genuinely cared for each other. Vivien stepped forward. I won't pretend our beginning was noble or romantic. I accepted Julian's offer because I was desperate. My brother needed heart surgery and I had no way to pay for it. Julian gave me that chance and yes, I took his money. But somewhere between the fake dates and rehearsed conversations, something shifted. Julian became someone I trusted, someone I relied on, someone I loved. The arrangement ended the day we admitted our real feelings to each other. Everything since then has been genuine. A reporter shouted, So you admit you were using him? Initially, yes, Vivien said steadily. And he was using me to satisfy his grandfather's requirements. We were honest with each other about that from the start. What we weren't honest about was what it became. Vivien and I are engaged, Julian continued. Not for show, not for appearances, but because we want to spend our lives together. We're telling you this truth now because we refuse to start our marriage with deception. Yes, we made questionable choices. Yes, we could have handled things differently. But we found something real, and that's worth being honest about. What about Veronica Ashford's claims that you were fake? Another reporter called. She was right, Julian said simply. At first. But she's wrong about us now. And her decision to leak private documents says more about her character than ours. Are you concerned about how this affects Blackwood Industries? My grandfather and the board are aware of everything. They've chosen to support us. If shareholders or partners disagree, that's their choice. But I won't apologize for finding love, even if it came about unconventionally. One more question, Julian said. Then we're done. Do you regret how you started this relationship? A reporter asked. Vivien and Julian looked at each other. She thought about that desperate night at the hospital, about the impossible deal, about every moment since that had led to this one. No, Vivien said. I don't regret it. My brother is alive and healthy because of that arrangement. I found the man I'm going to marry because of it. Sometimes the right thing comes from imperfect beginnings. Sometimes the best relationships start with honesty about what we need, Julian added. We needed each other. That was real from day one. Everything else just grew from there. They left the podium hand in hand, ignoring the shouted follow-up questions. Back in Julian's office they collapsed on the couch. That was terrifying, Vivien said. That was necessary. Julian pulled her close. Whatever happens now, at least we told our story. On our terms. The fallout was swift. Some media outlets praised their honesty. Others criticized their deception. Social media was divided. But through it all, something unexpected happened. People started sharing their own stories. Stories of relationships that started unconventionally, of love that developed from unlikely beginnings, of second chances and imperfect starts. A week after the press conference, Vivien was studying for an exam when Grace called. Turn on Channel 7. Now. Vivien found the remote. The news was showing footage of Veronica being led away in handcuffs. What happened? She was caught attempting to bribe a board member to vote against Julian in an upcoming decision. They'd been investigating her for weeks after the document leak. Apparently, she also falsified some emails to make it look like Julian was embezzling. Is Julian okay? He's fine. The emails were obviously fake. But Veronica's in serious trouble. Fraud, attempted bribery, corporate espionage. She's looking at real legal consequences. Vivien should have felt triumphant. Instead she just felt sad. Sad that Veronica had been so consumed by bitterness that she destroyed her own life trying to destroy theirs. I almost feel sorry for her, Vivien admitted. Don't, Grace said. She made her choices. You and Julian made yours. Hers led to handcuffs. Yours led to happiness. That's justice. As Vivien watched the news coverage, Julian came home early from work. He saw what she was watching and turned off the TV. Don't waste energy on her, he said. She's not part of our story anymore. I know. It's just sad. All that anger, all that effort, and for what? For nothing. Julian pulled her up from the couch. Come on. I want to show you something. He led her to the terrace, where he'd set up a small table with dinner and candles. What's this? This is us celebrating being done with drama. Done with arrangements and press conferences and legal troubles. This is us having a normal dinner on a normal Tuesday because we're a normal couple. We're not normal. You're a billionaire CEO and I'm a nursing student living in a penthouse. Okay, relatively normal. He pulled out her chair. The point is, we survived. We told the truth, weathered the storm, and came out stronger. That's worth celebrating. As they ate and talked and laughed, Vivien realized he was right. They'd faced everything together. Media scrutiny, family pressure, Veronica's revenge, their own fears. And they'd survived all of it. This was what real love looked like. Not perfect beginnings or fairy tale meetings, but two people choosing each other again and again, through every challenge. I love you, she said suddenly. Julian smiled. I know. You tell me every day. I mean, I really love you. The real you. The man who stayed at the hospital, who plays video games with Marcus, who makes terrible jokes during movies. I love the person you are when no one else is watching. Good, Julian said, reaching for her hand. Because that person loves you back. All of you. The stubborn parts, the scared parts, the brave parts. I love the woman who yelled at me in her tiny apartment, who stood up to my entire board, who took a chance on a desperate billionaire in a hospital parking lot. Best worst decision I ever made. Same. They clinked their glasses together, toasting to imperfect beginnings and honest futures. To love that grew from need but became something more. To choosing each other every single day. And somewhere in the city below, life went on. But up here, in this moment, they had everything that mattered. 6 months after the press conference, Vivien stood in front of the mirror in a suite at the Blackwood estate, adjusting the skirt of her wedding dress. It was simple and elegant, ivory silk that fell in soft waves to the floor. Nothing like the elaborate gown Catherine had initially suggested, but perfect for what Vivien wanted. A celebration of love, not a spectacle. You look beautiful, Grace said from the doorway. She was already dressed in her bridesmaid gown, a soft green that complemented Vivien's dress perfectly. I look nervous. You look both. It's allowed. Catherine bustled in carrying Vivien's bouquet, simple white roses with touches of blue. Oh, sweetheart. You're stunning. Julian is going to cry when he sees you. He better not. I specifically requested no crying at this wedding. Too late, Marcus said, poking his head in. I'm already tearing up and we haven't even started yet. Vivien laughed. Her brother looked so grown up in his suit, acting as Julian's best man as promised. In the past 6 months he'd shot up 3 inches and his health had never been better. He was back in school, thriving, even talking about studying computer science in college. How's Julian? Vivien asked. Pacing. Checking his watch every 5 seconds. Generally acting like a man who can't wait to marry his best friend. Marcus grinned. It's pretty great actually. A knock on the door revealed Thomas, distinguished in his formal suit. Ladies, gentlemen, it's time. The guests are seated. The minister is ready. And my grandson is about to wear a hole in the carpet from pacing. This was it. Vivien took a deep breath. You okay? Grace asked quietly. More than okay. I'm ready. The wedding was being held in the estate gardens, just as Catherine had hoped. Late spring had brought perfect weather, warm sunshine and clear skies. White chairs were arranged in rows, filled with people who'd become important to Vivien. Her nursing school classmates, neighbors from her old building, staff from the hospital where Marcus had his surgery, colleagues from Blackwood Industries. But as Vivien stepped out and saw Julian waiting at the altar, everyone else faded away. He wore a charcoal gray suit and the smile that she'd fallen in love with. The one that reached his eyes, that made him look younger and happier and free. Marcus walked her down the aisle, his hand firm in hers. When they reached Julian, Marcus placed Vivien's hand in his. Take care of her, Marcus said seriously. Always, Julian promised. The ceremony was simple. They'd written their own vows, wanting to speak their truth after months of pretending and performing. Vivien, Julian began, his voice steady despite the emotion in his eyes. We met in the worst possible way, under the most desperate circumstances. I proposed a business arrangement and you accepted. But somewhere between the fake dates and practice conversations, you became my best friend. You challenged me to be better, to be kinder, to be more than just my work. You taught me that love isn't about perfect beginnings or impressive gestures. It's about showing up every day even when things are hard. Especially when things are hard. I promise to show up for you, for Marcus, for the family we're building. I promise to love the woman you are now and the woman you'll become. I promise to never take you for granted, to always see you, to choose you every single day. Vivien's turn. She'd memorized these words, written and rewritten them a dozen times. But standing here looking at Julian, she spoke from her heart. Julian, you saved my brother's life. But more than that, you saved mine. I'd been surviving for so long that I'd forgotten how to live. You reminded me. You showed me that asking for help isn't weakness, that accepting kindness isn't shameful, that sometimes the best things come from our most desperate moments. You could have chosen anyone that night at the hospital, but you chose me. And every day since, I've tried to be worthy of that choice. I promise to be honest with you even when the truth is hard. I promise to stand beside you, to fight for us, to build a life that's real and messy and beautiful. I promise to love you not despite how we started, but because of it. Because our story proves that sometimes the right thing comes from imperfect beginnings. The minister smiled. By the power vested in me, I now pronounce you husband and wife. Julian, you may kiss your bride. Julian cupped Vivien's face gently, his thumb brushing her cheek in the gesture that had become familiar and precious. When he kissed her, it was soft and sweet and perfect. The assembled guests cheered, but Vivien barely heard them. This moment was just for them. As they walked back down the aisle together, married now, Vivien caught sight of faces in the crowd. Her old manager from the Sterling room, crying happy tears. The nurse who'd been so kind during Marcus's surgery. Grace's foundation coordinator who'd processed her scholarship. Dr. Peterson, Marcus's surgeon. And in the back row, surprising but welcome, Richard Sterling. He'd reached out a month ago to apologize for his involvement with Veronica's schemes, admitting he'd been manipulated. Julian had been gracious, and their companies were now working together on a joint project. The reception was held in a large tent on the lawn, decorated with lights and flowers. Dinner was served, toasts were made. Thomas gave a touching speech about watching Julian grow from a scared boy after his father's death to the confident man he'd become. Grace told embarrassing stories from their childhood that made Julian groan and Vivien laugh. Then it was Marcus's turn. I'm 12, he began, so I don't know much about love or marriage or any of that grown-up stuff. But I know my sister. I know she used to work 3 jobs and still come home smiling. I know she gave up her dreams so I could have surgery. I know she's the bravest person I've ever met. His voice got thick with emotion. When Julien came into our lives, I was scared. Scared he'd hurt her, scared he'd leave, scared of hoping things could actually get better. But he didn't leave. He stayed. He showed up at the hospital every day. He explained complicated tech stuff to a kid he barely knew. He made my sister laugh again. Marcus looked at Julien. You made our family bigger when I thought it would always just be the 2 of us. You gave Vivie a chance to go back to school, to chase her dreams again. You gave me a brother. I know this wedding is about you guys, but I wanted to say thank you. For choosing us. For staying. For being real. There wasn't a dry eye in the tent. Julien had to wipe his face quickly, and Vivien was openly crying. Marcus hurried back to his seat, embarrassed by the attention but clearly pleased. After dinner, dancing began. Julien pulled Vivien onto the floor for their first dance as husband and wife. That kid of yours is something special, Julien said as they swayed to the music. Our kid now, Vivien corrected. You married into this family. Best decision I ever made. They danced, lost in each other until other couples joined them. Catherine danced with Thomas. Grace danced with Marcus, who was getting tall enough that it didn't look completely ridiculous. Business partners and friends and family filled the floor. Later in the evening, Vivien stepped outside for a moment of quiet. The party continued behind her, but she needed to breathe, to process the magnitude of the day. Julien found her by the garden fountain, staring up at the stars. Hiding from your own wedding? He teased. Just taking it all in. 6 months ago we were lying to everyone about being together. Now we're married for real. Life moves fast. Too fast. No. She turned to him. Just fast enough. Julien wrapped his arms around her from behind, and they stood together in comfortable silence. The party noise faded to a pleasant hum. Somewhere Marcus was probably monopolizing the dessert table. Grace was likely networking with business contacts even at a wedding. Catherine was probably planning their first anniversary party. What are you thinking about? Julien asked. How grateful I am. For everything. For you, for this day, for the life we're building. She paused. And I'm thinking about that night at the hospital. About how terrified I was, how hopeless everything seemed. If someone had told me then where I'd be now, you wouldn't have believed them. Not for a second. But here you are anyway. Here we are. Julien kissed the top of her head. I have something for you. A wedding gift. Julien, we agreed no gifts. This wedding was already expensive. This didn't cost anything. Well, time. But not money. He pulled out a folded paper from his jacket. Open it. Vivien unfolded the paper to find a scholarship notification. Not for her, for Marcus. A full ride to any university he chose. Specifically for students interested in technology and computer science. Julien. Grace's foundation approved it last week. He doesn't know yet. I wanted to tell him together, but I couldn't wait to show you. Vivien's hands trembled. This meant Marcus could choose his future without worrying about cost. Could pursue his dreams the way she was finally able to pursue hers. This is too much. It's not enough. Vivien, you gave up everything for him. Let me help give some of it back. She turned in his arms, kissing him deeply. Thank you. For this, for everything, for being exactly who you are. Right back at you, Mrs. Blackwood. Mrs. Blackwood. The name still felt surreal. But standing here in Julien's arms with her future secure and her brother's future bright, it also felt right. They rejoined the party, dancing until late into the night. Around midnight, as guests began to leave, Marcus found them. Best wedding ever, he declared. When's the honeymoon? Are you going somewhere cool? Can I come? No, you cannot come on our honeymoon, Vivien laughed. You're staying with Grace and Catherine. But you'll be back in 2 weeks? 2 weeks exactly, Julien confirmed. And when we get back, we need to talk to you about something important. About your future. Marcus looked between them suspiciously. Good important or bad important? Very good, Vivien promised. But it can wait until after the honeymoon. As more guests departed, Vivien found herself alone with Grace for a moment. Thank you, Vivien said. For the scholarship opportunity, for being such a good friend, for accepting me into this family. I should thank you. You made my brother happy. You reminded him that life is more than work and responsibility. That's a gift. He did the same for me. Then you're perfect for each other. Grace hugged her. Welcome to the family officially. By 1 a.m. the party was winding down. Julien and Vivien said their final goodbyes, accepting hugs and well wishes. Thomas pulled Vivien aside one last time. When I made that clause in the will, I never imagined it would lead to this, he said. But I'm glad it did. You're good for him, Vivien. You make him better. He makes me better too. That's how it should work. Thomas smiled. Your parents would be proud of you. Of the woman you've become, of how you've protected Marcus, of the love you've found. The mention of her parents made Vivien's eyes sting. I like to think so. I know so. Now go. Your husband is waiting, and you have a honeymoon to start. Julian and Vivien left the estate in a shower of flower petals, driving toward the airport and 2 weeks in Italy. Just them, no media, no obligations, no performances. Just a newly married couple figuring out their future together. In the car, Julian reached over and took her hand. Their wedding rings caught the light. No regrets? He asked. Not a single one. You. Just that I didn't stop and talk to you sooner. Think of all the time we could have had. We have all the time in the world now. True. Julian brought her hand to his lips. So where should we start? Besides Italy, I mean. What comes next for us? Vivien thought about it. About nursing school and Marcus's education and building a home together. About someday having kids of their own, about growing old together, about all the moments still ahead. Everything, she said simply. We start with everything. And they did. Not perfectly because nothing worth having is perfect. But honestly, bravely together. They built a life from their imperfect beginning. They turned a desperate arrangement into a love story that proved the right person can find you in the most unexpected moment. Years later, when people asked them how they met, they'd tell the truth. All of it. The desperate proposal, the fake relationship, the way love crept up on them when they weren't looking. They'd talk about hospital rooms and board meetings, about family dinners and press conferences, about choosing each other again and again until choosing became habit and habit became forever. But on their wedding night, driving through the darkness toward their future, none of that mattered. All that mattered was this. Two people who'd started as strangers become partners and finally found home in each other. I love you, Mrs. Blackwood, Julian said. I love you too, Mr. Blackwood. And somewhere above them, the stars shone a little brighter, blessing this imperfect, perfect beginning.